September 29th, 2021 is now in session. Let it be noted that the whole committee is present. Alder Weary, Alder Burnett, Alder Gerlach, and myself, Alder Scannell. So I will take a motion to approve our agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alder Burnett, seconded by Alder Weary. Any changes anyone wants to make? Everybody approve? Aye.
Aye.
Disapprove? That passes. Take a motion to approve our minutes from our last meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Brunette. Any changes there? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Before we get on to regular business, let me state that everything we do here is just a recommendation to the full council, which meets next Tuesday, where everything will be taken up and passed. And are we ready for regular business, Dan?
Yes, we are.
Okey-doke. Item number 1. Consider with possible action on the request by Alder Steuer on behalf of the property owner at 1236 Thrush Street for the city to reimburse the property owner $3,500 for the removal of 3 street trees. We took this up last time. Staff was going to come back with some information. Staff?
Yeah, so just to give you a brief recap, so this issue was discussed at the September 15th Parks Committee. On August 25th, our forestry supervisor drove by the residence at 1236 Thrush Street and witnessed a contractor removing 3 street trees. So our supervisor told the contractor that they had to stop work because these were not private trees. By the time we had notified the contractor, all 3 trees were taken down and one of the 3 stumps were partially ground out. We did discuss this with the homeowner, and he indicated to us that he was not aware that these were street trees. He thought they were private trees, therefore he contracted those services out. At the last Parks Committee, he requested that the city reimburse him the full amount of $3,500. What was requested of the Parks staff was to talk to our forestry department and determine how much it would have cost our staff, our forestry crews, had we removed the trees ourselves. So in the agenda packet, you'll find a summary of what those fees would have been, and those were not those were real costs. Those were not a profit on top of it. So these were real expenses that were calculated out. So for labor, there would be a 4-person forestry crew. The total cost for the time that we would estimate that would take would be about $400 or $398 in labor to remove those 3 trees. And then there would be cost and wear and tear on the equipment. So that would be gas, that would be mileage, stuff like that. The cost for the equipment would be $679. So the total cost to remove all 3 street trees, had the city done the work ourselves, would have been $1,078 rounding up. I do want to mention also that we did not calculate out the cost to grind out the stumps because they were not ground out. So they're still in place. Only one of the stumps was partially ground out, so our forestry crews will come back there at a later date and grind those 3 stumps out of there, replace it with topsoil and seed it. So therefore we did not calculate a cost for grinding down the stumps. So now the question that's being asked is, does the committee want to reimburse the homeowner in full? Partially reimburse the homeowner based on what our expenses would have been because we would have removed the trees later on this winter, or to decline the request altogether because that's not something we've ever done in the past where a homeowner has removed city trees and then we've reimbursed them. That doesn't mean we can't consider it in this situation. It's just not a past practice we've done in the past.
Anyone from Alder Brunette?
I see Mr. Campins online. I would be happy to hear from him if he wants to address the committee. But before doing so, Director Ditchite, the amount was $1,033.
$1,077.93.
Okay, just one note for the committee, if you recall, last time we met, Director Ditchite mentioned that there is no line in his budget to remove these funds from, my recollection, so we'd have to, if we go ahead to approve any reimbursement, it would have to come from the contingency account. Is that correct, Director Ditchite?
Either that, or we could potentially overspend our budget, which in essence changes how much contingency would go into the account at the end of the calendar year.
Okay, but whatever the motion, if we were to make one to that effect, we would have to put the funding source in the motion.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay, all right, thank you. Unless anybody else wants to address the now, I would make a motion to open the floor.
Anybody else want to say anything before we open the floor? We have a motion to open the floor by Alder Burnett.
Second.
Second by Alder Weary. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the floor is now open. Is there anybody here to speak on this? Okay, just please state your name and address.
Luke Campen, 1236 Thrush Street.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't actually really have any further comments. I appreciate the committee taking the time to listen to my requests. I guess just in terms of the budget line, if that's an issue, I would certainly be fine waiting until next year's budget if it needs to be fit into a separate line item for next year. There's no urgency here. So, thank you.
Motion to close the.
Oh, sorry, you have a question?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair.
A question? Question?
A question, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
I know you watch like a hawk. Anyway, yeah.
Questions now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Luke, thanks for coming back in. You know, it was stated that you were looking for the entire reimbursement, and from what I remember last time, you were looking at whatever may be equitable. You weren't saying I have to have it at all costs, correct?
Absolutely, I'd be very happy with the
Right.
$1,078. I'm not asking for the full 35 at this point.
That I wanted to just clarify that fact because I know the agenda item states it as such, but depending on what the committee says, you know, that could be an equitable decision. So, yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Kempen?
Yeah, I would just say too, I know that there was some concern at the last meeting that this reimbursement could, you know, incent other people to take down trees, you know, without permission and get the reimbursement. I think that in this case, if I'm only being reimbursed the actual cost, and it's a tree that was already marked to be taken down, people aren't going to just take down trees at their own cost when they can wait for the city to do so. So I think that it kind of mitigates that reasoning. But that's all I have to say.
Okay. Alder Gerlach, question?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear because I thought last time we said the trees were, although they were on the list to be taken down in winter, they were not marked. Is that right?
That is
Yes,
correct.
Yes?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Kempen?
Motion to close the floor.
Okay. And nothing else to add, Mr. Campen? You're done? Okay. Motion to close the floor by Alder Burnett. Was that a second, Mr. Weary? I couldn't.
Yeah.
Alder Weary? Oh, second by Alder Weary. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the floor is now closed. Alder Burnett.
I would like to put a motion on the floor and then hopefully it gets seconded, and I'd like to speak to that motion. Motion to refund $1,073, reimburse property owner $1,077.93 with the funds coming from the contingency account.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Alder Burnett, seconded by Alder Weary to reimburse the amount stated. We'll just discuss that now. Alder Burnett.
Yes, you know, it's a tough issue. I know that. I don't want to set a precedent, and I think the criticism would be that we are. But I do think the gentleman here is rather sincere. I commend Director Ditchite for preparing this analysis for the city so we can understand the cost that it would have cost the city to do this in a short amount of time. One thing too, and this is a further agenda item we'll be discussing in a little bit, but emerald ash borer infected trees in the 10th district, Alderman Stoyer's district, there are 111 high priority trees, which would place his district number 3 out of the 12. So, you know, Mr. Campen made a mistake, but it actually benefited the city, and it would have cost the city this much anyways. So in government, we make these tough decisions, and I know the criticism would be that we're setting a precedent, but I don't want to be overly rigid on these sorts of things, overly rigid in a way that harms the very people who we have been elected to serve and represent. So I would feel very comfortable with this motion. That doesn't mean I'm going to approve every single one moving forward. Hopefully this is an isolated incident. Certainly seems that way. But let's be real here. Mr. Campen, in an accidental way, the city a favor by removing these trees, and I think a fair reimbursement of $1,077.93 is warranted. Thank you.
I do want to just mention one thing. If the council were to recommend this and the motion carries as recommended, and you don't need to add this to the motion, but I would just request that Mr. Campen provide either an invoice or a paid invoice showing proof that that is, in fact, was paid.
Yeah, good point.
Prior to us reimbursing him, obviously.
Any other comments? Alder Gaylock?
As you know, gentlemen, I do not approve of this. I think this is setting a dangerous precedent. And this is why, even though we call it a mistake, Mr. Campen was perfectly willing to pay $3,500 to have those trees removed. He paid it. And then when he found out they belonged to someone else, he said, oh, trees down, no, you paid for it. Even if we give him just the amount it would have cost us to cut them down, the message we are sending to people, and you know, I mean, we just saw that huge report that came to us last night about these trees all over the city. There are people who want those trees down, who are desperate to have those trees down, who are terrified they're going to fall in their houses. I've already had a constituent say to me verbatim, who will I sue when it falls on my house? And I just think we are definitely setting a precedent. I think it's going to be hard for you all to say no when the next person comes back and says, well, all I'm asking is for how much it would have cost the city. I think you are creating a wild, wild west where so many people want so many trees down, and we have a forester who is experienced and trained, who has a plan. I believe we should simply support that, and nothing personal, no hard feelings. I mean, Mr. Campen has certainly been a very respectful person and has offered his case very, very respectfully and logically, but I think this is a mistake. I do not think we should do it.
Anyone else? Alder Weary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I seconded the motion and I do support it. I don't feel that that's I've seen in 20 years on the council, city council vote on both sides of an issue multiple times. So the precedent is whatever the new council wants. You know, the wind can change pretty quickly with each new council. So I think here we take them on individual basis, and this one in particular with the way the trees were and no sidewalk, it's easy to see where there'd be a mistake. I'm fine with it. Thanks.
Alder Stoyer.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with Alder Weary and Alder Burnett on this, but I have a concern with the contractor who should have been aware of this. So granted it comes down to the homeowner, but what about the contractor? I mean, I'm not asking to find out who it was, but I think that should be something that we should consider as well. That, the contractor came out and did that. Do you think they would have been aware of it? And I would be remiss to see this contractor do more work with the city if he has done that, if they have done that. I just want to make that for a point for discussion or clarification, if you will. So that's just one of my concerns. Thank you.
Alder Dorf.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to reflect back onto a couple council. We were having a discussion about something, and it happened to be a restaurant, I think a liquor license or something. And, you know, we were making a decision on that. And one of the alders brought up, but wait, back in 2016, we voted this way on it, and now we're looking like we're going to vote that way on it. And so precedents do happen. Can we add something to this motion that this is not precedent setting, that this is a one-time issue? I mean, what, or can I ask Director Ditchite, what, does he have a concern about it setting a precedent?
Yeah, as I mentioned at the last Parks Committee meeting, I do have some concerns with the precedents that this would set. If there's an option to add something to the motion, I would be in favor of that. But that being said, I do, like I mentioned at the last meeting, I do believe Mr. Campen that this was an honest mistake, and you know, hopefully it won't happen again, but you just never know when the next request is going to be.
Well, I just hope the committee will add something to their motion.
Okay. Alder Burnett?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm just struggling for the words to add that would fit the situation.
Is legal available?
There is nobody on here from legal.
I appeal to the great Randy Scannell, Chairman Scannell, and his wisdom here.
Well, let me just share my thoughts on this before we get there. For myself, the fact that the constituents going to still be paying more out of pocket, that no one's going to be doing this unless they do a mistake. You know, I think the only precedent we're setting is I don't think people are going to purposely get out there and pay when they don't have to pay at all. When the city's going to do it for them with their tax dollars, as opposed to paying a few thousand and getting maybe some of that back. I think not many people are going to go there unless they accidentally, as in this case, honestly think it's their responsibility and they're taking care of it. On that score, I was prepared to not support this if it was coming out of Parks budget. I don't think it should come out of Parks budget. I don't think that's appropriate because it doesn't match up dollar for dollar. I mean, it's not like our forester is now got some, you know, we can recoup that $1,000 somehow. We can't. I mean, it's not like we're going to say the foresters can take 2 hours off, you know, and balance things out. It just doesn't work that way. So I don't think it'd be fair for Parks to take a ding on this. I think we should look at it as the city. As a city, well, how do we feel about this? It was an honest mistake. It's a little over $1,000. And I'm not sure that any language we add is going to make a bit of difference in the future, because I think, as Alder Weary mentioned, alders can do whatever we want. Even if we put something on this, and we certainly can still do that, but that still doesn't bind alders to do. I mean, we can't bind up alders in the future. They're going to do what they want to do. They have that authority. They have that, you know, and I wouldn't want them to do anything else, really. I mean, we could maybe make some kind of guidelines to help future alders. You know, what were they thinking? Well, you know, that's what the minutes are for. To go back and look and see, you know, why did they make this decision? How did they make this decision? So, as a city, as a taxpayer, am I okay telling my fellow constituents that we're going to take some of your tax money to reimburse Mr. Campen for an honest mistake that still benefited the city because we have so many trees that need to come down. So it was kind of a benefit to the city. If I tell that to my constituents, what is my constituent going to say back to me? Okay, or is he going to say, "You kidding? Not my tax dollars. It shouldn't go to that." And I'm just thinking that the amount is so. I mean, what would it be? A quarter of a cent from if you distribute that across the whole city, or what? You know, what are we really asking from our constituents on this? I'll get to so. I'm kind of leaning back into. I'm leaning into perhaps granting this. Haven't completely made up my mind yet. Want to hear some more discussion, but I'm thinking that as long as it's not coming out of Parks should not have to bear the responsibility for this, because it really doesn't benefit Parks to reimburse Mr. Campen. He really didn't do Parks a favor. He did the city a favor, perhaps. That's an argument that can be made. But for it didn't help out our forestry department at all, from what I can see, especially financially. So first, I saw Alder Dorf's hand up first, and then.
Thank you. So if you don't identify a funding source, you're going to have to refer this to finance, because if you think it can come out of contingency, it's going to have to go through the finance committee. Otherwise, you will need to identify a funding source in any case where you want this to come out of, and then it can't end here if it's not coming out of Parks. It can't end here. Then it has to go to another committee.
Right, and I'm thinking maybe that's where it should have gone to begin with, because I really don't see this as a part. And I'm sorry, I'm cross-talking here. I don't have Silverdorf. Alder Burnett, you have the floor.
I will appreciate that, but I see Director Ditchite raise his hand. I think he might have some insight.
Okay.
I just wanted to remind the council and the committee here that the forestry budget is 88% funded by our stormwater account. So I don't know if that has any bearings in your recommendation moving forward.
Yeah. And anything else, Alder Burnett?
No, that's a good point. I think that was mentioned last month. Yeah, I understand how some of us are conflicted on this. The reason why it's a little more easier decision for me, a couple things I go back to is that I remember, you know, I don't know how long Mr. Campen has been a homeowner, but many times in the early stages of home ownership for me, even now, sometimes things are not always clear. And I know that it's the expectation of a property owner to get answers, to investigate, and maybe he should have looked a little further into whether or not if the absence of a sidewalk means the trees were on his property or the right-of-way. And I've been an alder for a while, and trying to 100% understand right-of-ways and what's city property, what's not, it is confusing. It's even more confusing out here being on the reservation. There's some, you know, some issues there with some of the land out here. So I do feel for any property owner, not just Mr. Campen, but sometimes engaging, making decisions as a homeowner, not always black and white. It's not always as easy for us who have the inside knowledge as it is for the general public. So I just don't want the city of Green Bay, for our property owners, ever get a reputation that we're too rigid on some things, that we can't look outside the box and understand each situation is a little different, whether that happened now, a year from now, or 10 years from now. I agree with Alder Weary that each council person makes decisions at that moment. And I myself have been not 100% consistent. I acknowledge that, and it is what it is. I think we all face that. One thing I will say, though, in regards to the forestry department, the fact that a private contractor paid well over $3,000 in our city staff through the forestry department would have cost the taxpayer or the stormwater utility only $1,000. Just goes to show how efficient they are and how productive they are. That's a great story for the taxpayer, that we are getting outstanding benefit for the work that they do. So I support the motion as it stands. I think that we can move on from this. And I agree with Alder Dorf. Maybe it needs to go to the finance department. So my original motion was to approve and taking the funds from the contingency account. I guess, I don't know if I need to amend that motion, but.
Yeah, since you asked my help before, how about a motion refer to finance with the recommendation that we found Mr. Campen to have made an honest mistake, and that we think he should be reimbursed from contingency fund.
In the amount of $1,077.93.
Sure.
I would like to make that motion by substitution.
Okay. Is there a second for that? Second by Alder Weary. Any further discussion? Alder Dorf.
I would just encourage you strongly to make your case at finance. Okay, so please show up to finance to make the case when it gets on the agenda.
Do you understand, Mr. Campen?
Well, not just
Yeah.
Mr. Campen,
But
Alders
whoever
too.
else. Yep.
Yes, Alders too.
Yeah.
Well, it will snake its way back around to council, so.
Yeah.
And it will.
Yeah.
It will.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is, for me, this is a much better, because as long as my big to do on this was I really didn't think parks should be taking the hit for this financially. I think it should be a citywide, from the city levy as a whole, as a community. Are we going to help each other out when an honest mistake is made, or are we not? And of course, that is by, for me, an individual business basis, because it all depends on what kind of costs we're talking about and all the other circumstances around it. So for me, it is case by case. And I think that's, no matter what language we put, it will always be that way. I tried to craft something so that the council would never have to take up fluoride again. And it just can't be done, unfortunately. So we can't, it's up to the future alders if they're going to put themselves through that or not. When I'm done, we have a motion to send this to finance under the referral conditions stated. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So that passes 3-1 with Alder Gerlach in the negative.
Garrett, could I make one point after the fact?
Alder Steuer?
I appreciate the work that Director Ditchite did and his staff to put this together. Just looking at what Mr. Campen paid and what the city, what it cost the city, there's still over a $1,400 difference that he had to pay to a private contractor that I'm still a little upset about. So I'm just saying that was an eye-opening learning experience for me just to see that difference. And if nothing else, it's something that we learned and that our city can be very efficient with this type of thing. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Alder Gerlach.
I wouldn't normally ask to speak after the fact, but I would just like to respond to what Alder Steuer said. Mm-hmm. We have to remember that this man was perfectly happy to pay $3,500 to a contractor when he thought it was his own trees he was cutting down. When he found out it was someone else's trees, he said, "They're your trees, you pay for it." Just remember that. And remember that when the next person makes an honest mistake and comes to this committee and says, "Oops, give me some money."
Valid point. Is anybody else? We're done with this now, eh? Can we move on to item 2?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, item 2. Consideration with possible action on the request by all we received to review drainage concerns in the baseball fields at Coburn Park. Staff?
So yeah, as you recall, this issue was discussed in great detail at the last Parks Committee. The motion of the meeting was to hold this item for 2 weeks and discuss it again today. And the reason for holding it is Alderman Weary wanted to have a chance to meet with the adjacent property owners to determine if they had any interest in granting an easement to the city so that a berm could be constructed on their property versus city property. If you recall, there isn't room to install a berm on city property without relocating the drain tile that was recently installed. Alderman Weary and I both met with 2 adjacent property owners that would be affected by the berm construction on September 23rd. So that at that meeting, both owners discussed not only their concerns with the past drainage issues, but they also addressed concerns that the drain tile that was installed might not be adequate solution to the drainage issue that they've had in the past. So from there, I don't know if Alderman Weary has anything to add to that, and I believe there's somebody here from the public who might want to speak on this.
Okay, Alder Weary, anything, or
yeah, just briefly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I wanted to thank Director Ditchite and then Bruce Cantrell and Janet Angus who met out on the site last week and must have spent, I don't know, half an hour walking it and looking at it and talking about it. So I believe they are both here tonight. So I would make a motion to open the floor.
Is there a second? Okay, motion by Alder Weary to open the floor, second by Alder Burnett. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the floor is now open. If you'd like to speak on this, just please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Bruce Cantrell. Can you hear me?
Yep.
1419 Shirley Street. And am I allowed to share my screen to show photos of water?
I don't know if we got that capability, Director.
Well, I believe I do, but I'm not sure. Hold on.
Click on the right side there, though. Thank you. Got him. Or can you?
Still have them, Bruce.
Right.
I think so.
Or co-host?
Yeah,
Okay, I believe that you can share your screen now.
Okay, thank you. So we're talking about the backside of Colburn Park that goes all the way to the edge of the houses here. And what we've kind of noticed is that there's a stream that runs down here that you've filled in, and the water from the park runs across the park and runs down in front and behind my garage, plus runs down between Janet Angus' property and my property. So there is a lot of the city's park department's water that runs across and fills up those ditches. But that's kind of what we're talking about, how we're just worried that it'll continue to run even more because you've changed the grade. Can you see this screen here? You've changed the grade of this is the park's property behind my mother-in-law's house next door, and she's lived there since '67. And so the water runs to the creek, and you see the creek has got water in it where the drain tile is now. And the water also runs here and then runs across my property. So I get water that runs across in front and behind my property. I also get, this is the entire, between the two water that actually runs from that drain tile area and basically makes a stream that goes all the way to Janet Angus's front of her house. So it looks like this when it's running down and running into into the drains down here. So it's a substantial amount of water, so much that my children floated a canoe in here, and we have it from 2010. This is when that intersection flooded for something else, but we have 2015, we have 2003, we have 2002, 2002. So we have it from different years, the amount of water. So I'm unsure that the people that designed the drain system understood how much water actually comes off here, especially when you raise the grade of this entire area by 3 feet. So that's what we're very concerned about. So that's all I really need to say about that. But this is what naturally happens with the water coming off the park and crossing both of our properties.
Okay, well, the agenda item has to do with a berm
Right.
on your property in park.
Right.
Do you have anything to say about that?
I would consider that. It's unfortunate that when the Parks Department created the swale or the drainage ditch, that they put it so close to the property line that there wasn't a berm that could go to the edge of that could actually go to the edge of the, that could go to the edge of the actual park area. So, but anyway, I'm willing to discuss that. But I believe the small amount of drainage that's in here is not going to be enough with the size of the hill going down from the baseball fields. So I would be for discussing a berm to try to alleviate some of the park water crossing both properties to get to the storm drains on Shirley Street. Thank you.
Any questions?
I'm going to take the screen sharing off. If you
Okay.
Do you have
Thank
anything else you want to share before I do that?
Nope.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Alder Burnett.
Thank you, Chairman. Sir, I don't know your last name. I'll just call you Bruce. I prefer to call people by their last names when they appear. But anyways, Bruce.
Yeah.
Were you able to meet with the Parks Department with Alderman Wary and Ms. Angus?
Yes.
Were you happy with how it was presented, what the solution? I know he's going to get to that part, but while the floor is open, I just want to know: were you happy with the compromise or the solution provided?
It would have been nice if they would have known how much water already comes across the properties and built a berm into the edge of the park property as part of the design. So even the section, which is the lowest part by my corner of my fence, I mean, I don't think that berm's gonna even help that at all. So I'm not sure that small pipe that's in there, capping this creek, this temporary creek that's always there. I just don't, I guess we'll have to find out.
Yeah, and so some of the water flooding issues have existed, as your pictures showed, well before this project. The question is, does the project add to flooding? Because the worst thing not the worst thing, but one of the worst things as a property owner is when you have water approaching your property and water just does not stop. So if we're adding to that water flow rather than preventing it reasonably on a city park, then that's really the situation we're dealing with. Okay, thank you.
Well, this year we had one of the worst. Yeah, this year we had one of the worst floods going down between the two properties. It went past the soil dam. It basically broke past the soil dam and went down the property, and that was 2 months ago in construction. So
okay. Well, thank you.
So
those are my questions.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Alder Gerlach, question?
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Cantrell. So that really bad flooding was 2 months ago. I can't remember when we were told the drain tiles were put in.
The drain tile was installed after that flooding event.
Okay, so has there been another big rainfall since then to test it out? Okay.
No.
Thank you.
There has been significant rainfall, but it's been in short duration and nothing like what that rainfall was.
Any other questions? Anything else you care to add?
And that was some spotty rain since then. We're on the east side, but not on the west side, so we haven't had anywhere near that kind of rain. So, I just, when the director was talking about 100-year floods and things like that, it's like, well, my suggestion was, this isn't a 100-year flood. This is pretty much every spring, and it's a lot of water from the park. So it's not every 100 years. We're not talking about overbuilding something for water retention. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on this?
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
Motion to close the floor by Alder Burnett, seconded by Alder Gerlach. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Opposed? Oh,
Wait a minute, I heard a voice.
this,
Janet.
this is Janet Angus. I guess I had to push *6 before I could talk, so my apologies.
all right. Yeah, motion open the floor. Alder Burnett, second by Alder Weary. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The floor's now. Please state your name and address.
Janet Angus, 1403 Shirley Street, Green Bay. I don't want to go over what I spoke about. I think that would be a severe waste of time. However, I did want to thank the Parks Director and also Alderman Weary for meeting with me. I think that there's no ditch back there right now on the park's property to properly drain the park. Unfortunately, what I came away from that meeting is realizing that the ditch that's on my property that overflows between snow melt and also as it did severely overflow this last August is really the only ditch or the swale for the drainage from the park. And I am very concerned that the drain tiles that were installed way too close to the property line, my property line. I think the drain tiles were done further from the property lines, further up the block, but the controls and my property, I think that swale and then the drain tile is way too close to the property line. So I think Alderman Weary actually had a great idea of putting in either another drain tile further over and putting that swale in on the park's property so that you could have a berm and a swale and then the drain tile, and hopefully that would work to drain the park. My property I can take care of all by myself, but I just don't think that the whole north side of it should drain through my property, which is why I hate to go backwards last August, because I wanted to avoid this. I wanted to inform and avoid because, like I said, I've been there since 1965. I think the house was built 1964, 65. And when the park comes in and adds land, adds elevation, adds soil, and there were thousands of yards of soil that were brought in with this last edition of this last ball field, it changes the way the water flows. And, you know, I'm hopeful that maybe it will work, but with that last storm and seeing how much water there was, over 30% of my property was covered in at least a foot of water. And that had never happened before to that extreme. So I think the park, before you finish this project, and as long as you're doing it, the Parks Department really needs to reevaluate how they handled this and figure out a better solution, because the people I'm working with have said spring, when the water's flowing fast, those drain tiles are not going to be able to absorb it all, and it's going to flood out my sidewalk. Because look at it, if you look at the parking lot, the drains in the parking lot for this that the city's put in are too high, so the water doesn't even hit them. It goes down the sidewalk and ends up going down the street and into the storm sewers of the street, just out the whole corner of Shirley and Locust. Issue, because the water has nowhere to go, it goes down. And Shirley and Locust is the bottom of the hill, and that whole intersection gets flooded out. So I'm all for fixing the problem. I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the fixing of the problem, which is why I went over this August of 2020. And unfortunately, adjacent landowners were not notified when this was going through, which is another issue. I realize that, but it does need to be a berm. So anyway, I won't go over ad nauseum what I've already stated 2 weeks ago, because I don't want to waste everyone's time. But it would be very nice if the city could fix the water issues that have been developing back there since the first baseball diamond was installed in the 70s, because it was definitely higher than our property. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for Ms. Alder Gerlach?
No, I just was giving her a thumbs up. I thank her for that concise and reasonable explanation. I really appreciated it.
Okay. Anything else then from anyone? Okay, thank you, Ms. Angus, and I'll take a motion to close the floor.
Move to close the floor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Alder Gaylock to close, seconded by Alder Weary. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the floor is now closed. Why don't we kick this to Alder Weary?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think the reasonable thing to do here, I mean, we could obviously just sit and wait and see what the new improvements, the new changes do. However, if it creates a big issue in spring, we're going to be right back here again and saying we should have took care of this beforehand. So we had batted this around a little bit last week about potentially, and you can let me know when I'm out of line here, Director Ditchite, but of having an engineering study about how the new changes will affect water runoff in that area and what we could do to mitigate it. Whether that means putting in, like Janet Angus had mentioned, a new drain tile and then a berm, maybe a swale, or what it might entail. But I'm not sure, Director, if you've had a chance to look at what that might cost or how long that would take. I know there's an internal review. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
So I can expand on that a little bit. So
if I may first, a question for clarification.
Yes.
Are we talking about replacing the drain tile there, or other? I thought it was putting in new drain tile elsewhere. Correct.
Well, there's quite a bunch. There's quite a lengthy amount of drain tiles. The portion that we're talking about is really just behind Janet and Bruce's property. It's right up tight to the property line. So really, rather than spend twice, to dig it up and move it, you could just maybe put some in and leave it where it is.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate the clarification. Go ahead, Director.
Just a couple of things to note here in regards to that. So we really have two options moving forward, as Alderman Weary mentioned. Option one is to see how the new drain tile system functions. It was engineered as best practice for a similar type athletic field, and there have been no indications that it's not functioning properly. So there hasn't been standing water along that property edge since the drain tile has been installed. All of the concerns that have been discussed were all previous concerns. That's not to say that we might not have issues down in the future in a big rain event. Because as I mentioned at the last Parks Committee, it was not engineered to handle all drainage coming off of the site. You would need a fairly large berm to guarantee that that would happen in every instance. The other thing too, which has to be into consideration here, is if the city were to look at this as an engineered option to look at future engineering, we would only be looking at engineering the water that comes off the park. We have not explored what other areas the water is coming from other adjacent residences. So we even couldn't guarantee that there wouldn't be standing water in the future if there's surface water coming from adjacent properties, or even from the road adjacent to it, because that would not be affected in any re-engineering. And then if we were to consider re-engineering to take a more proactive approach, a couple of things to note. One is it is pretty unlikely that that would be installed this year anymore anyway, because per state statute we are capped with a 15% change order to any construction contract, and we're pretty much already close to that with the work that we've done adding the drain tile in the first place. So with the cost of replacing the drain tile with something bigger to handle a larger storm event, it would need to be engineered and bid out for reconstruction, more than likely. Now, that's not 100%. I'd have to verify to see where we're at with percentages in the contract to date, but I know last I talked to our engineers, we were cutting it close to that cap of 15%, and that is by state statute that we are mandated to stick within those parameters. So if the desire is to get something implemented quickly before winter comes, if we're moving drain tile, that can't happen. If we're just building a berm, we could probably do it fairly quickly with our own city crews and do it fairly economically, but the only way for that to happen would be to build it on adjacent properties. So I guess I want to kind of expand on that a little bit in the fact that the desired timing to get it done quickly before fall, it likely cannot happen in that timeline.
Okay. So the soonest it'd be done as soon as we get a berm up would be in the spring, correct?
The soonest we'd be able to add drain tile and increase the size of the drain tile and move it would be next spring. We could potentially build a berm this fall if city crews build it on adjacent property.
Okay.
Because then it wouldn't be part of a change order cost with the construction contract. It would be city crews installing it.
Okay. Well, this particular agenda item just pertains to a berm, so let's focus on the berm. Do we want a berm, or do we want to set the berm aside and maybe wait for next year and add more drain tile, or hold it weary?
Thank you. I just wonder, Mr. Chairman, the agenda item does state in consideration with possible action reviewing drainage concerns. So really, I think it does make it a little wider than just berm.
All right, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You're right. Okay, yep.
That's what I wanted, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. To berm or not to berm? That is the question. Okay, no. Oh, it sounds like Randy.
You're going to burn me with that one.
Just one other thing that I do want to point out too is if there is a consideration to re-engineer it and install a bigger drain tile system, as I mentioned before, that could cost tens of thousands. I don't know at this point what that dollar amount would be until it's engineered and we have a rough cost estimate. But that might have to be added to the city's bond request for 2022 for funding if it gets to be too expensive. We have a little bit of funding left over for this project, but it's not an unlimited budget source.
If I could, Director, we had discussed last week when we met the group. I remember the engineer who did the parking lot and the draining over there could perhaps review the plan over here and give their recommendations.
We did reach out to the engineering firm for $5,000. They can do an analysis comparing the original site conditions before we graded to the current conditions, just to see is there going to be an improvement or not. And they might even be able to put a storm event to it saying, you know, what's there now can handle a storm event of this magnitude. That would be the extent of the $5,000 and what it would get you. It would just be kind of a preliminary analysis to see what's there. My only concern with moving ahead with that study is if there's no desire to actually improve it, then you're not really getting a lot of valuable information from that study. If the desire is, yes, we need to improve it based on the concerns that the adjacent residents have addressed, then that's a valuable study to do, and that would need to be done as part of a bigger engineering study to determine what to do other than what's there now. So that $5,000 is not going to get you an engineered solution. It'll just tell you how it compares to what was originally there. If you want an engineered solution, we would have to set some criteria telling the consultant that they have to engineer it to these standards. We have to pick a storm event and say, you're engineering it to this storm event. We don't want any water beyond that storm event to go beyond the property lines. And then they would have to give us a quote for that work. I did not give a quote on that because there's a lot of unknowns with that as far as what your standards are. I will tell you that, you know, we don't typically engineer any of our parks in that manner, to keep all stormwater from all rain events off of adjacent property owners. That's not to say we can't in this situation. I'm just saying somebody would have to define what the terms of that is. And there really are no standards out there saying what best practice is that I'm aware of.
Alder Steuer.
Thank you, Chair. I think Director Ditchett, you might have answered some of that. I was going to ask, in your estimation, what this might cost, you know, putting in another drain tile or even a berm. I guess my concern is that we had, you know, is the city liable or not liable in your estimation, or is that a law question as far as this flood going and the work that was done? I guess I'm just concerned about that in the future. And if you were saying that there's no way that you can engineer things or understand what kind of floods or kind of things will happen when you do a park plan, I don't know if I'm asking a nebulous question there, but I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts that way.
Well, in answer to your first question, that's really a legal question that we'd have to reach out to the law department to get an answer on. I will tell you that when the concern was brought forward after that flooding event, we took immediate action, and we fixed the silt fence that was damaged in that rain event. We met with city engineers immediately the next day, because I believe the rain event was a weekend. As you know, the very next day on a weekday is when we started addressing this issue with our engineers. Our engineers came up with what they felt was the most appropriate fix based on all of the information that they've been given. And they do have some concerns with the installation of a berm. And so that is one of the reasons why the drain tile was selected over installing a berm to begin with as the only option. And so, I mean, you know, whether or not there be a future lawsuit, I can't answer that if there's another big rain event.
I have one other question. Let's see, what was it? I'm going to hold off for now. It'll come back to me. Thank you.
Well, I have a suggestion but first, what was the concerns about? There's concerns about actually putting in a berm, Director?
Yeah, there are some engineering concerns with putting a berm in. One is, right now there's a swale there with a drain tile that collects the water. It collects the water from both sides. So it collects it not only from the park end of things, it also collects any water that drains off of the adjacent residents' properties. So if we were to install a berm on the opposite side of a drain, we would potentially have to install a drain on the property owner's side of the berm to collect any water that isn't making its way to the drain tile we put in. The other concern is obviously where does the berm end, and can water just go around the berm? There is a parking lot that's right there with a driveway. And so any berm that's put in, we can't make it any taller than that driveway, otherwise the water is just going to go around that berm and go on to the adjacent property owners, unless that berm is extended into, you know, beyond the park limits. So there are concerns with the berm. I'm not saying that it's not a solution. You know, it is a potential solution. It's one that our engineers talked about, but we felt that the most appropriate fix was installing the drain tile. And, you know, like I've said numerous times, there hasn't been a drainage concern since that drain tile has been brought in or was installed. And so I do understand the concerns that have been brought forward, and I'm hopeful that they've been addressed.
Alder Steuer?
What I wanted to ask, as far as any kind of work that would be done where you would have to put it on the citizens' property, I mean, there would be a change then as far as size of different things. Is there anybody there can talk to that issue as far as how that might change things, or is that a legal issue as well?
Well, obviously, we would need to get an easement from both property owners, maybe even more depending on where that berm would go. There may be more adjacent owners than just the two. But the first thing is there'd have to be an easement. Then there'd also have to be some discussion about what the city's paying for versus the homeowners. Because Janet Angus, she has a chain link fence along her property, which is right where the berm would go if we were to install a berm on her property. So then the question becomes who's responsible to remove the fence and replace it after the fact. And then, you know, depending on what the engineering solution is, the question becomes, are we required to either build a swale on the other side of the berm or put in an inlet or two to collect the water? And if so, who would be responsible for that cost? So, you know, there would definitely need to be more discussion with the property owners, unless the expectation is the city is going to pay all of those expenses. And if the city's paying all of those expenses, then we'd have to, it could be fairly expensive even if the city were to build it. Like I said, we can build the berm with city staff, but when it comes to installing fencing, when it comes to installing additional drainage or additional drains, that would all have to be contracted out. And if you exceed $25,000 in contracted amount, it needs to be a publicly bid project, which I don't know if it would reach that or not, because it hasn't been engineered.
At least you're looking at it. And like I said, there's a lot of room for discussion here. It's not just water issues. It sounds like a number of things. So I appreciate the comments. That's all I have for now.
Alder Gerlach.
I have questions. I hope Alder Weary's there because I'm kind of counting on him to know the history of this. I confess I don't know anything about this area. So Director Ditchite or Alder Weary, I've heard some things that are confusing and saw some pictures that were confusing. We saw pictures of flooding going all the way back to 2002 and many years, and they all look pretty much the same. And so I don't know the history of this park and its development and redevelopment and improvement, and whether there's a relationship between the installation of the park when it was built. I mean, because Janet Angus told us she lived there all her life. So, but we've closed the floor. So my question is, historically, have we been able to trace the flooding in this area to the park and changes in the park? And also, I heard you say, Director Ditchite, something about you don't know if the water, what water is coming from the park and what water is coming from adjacent properties. I wonder if there's some way to know that. And Alder Weary, can you just give a little history of this problem, please?
Certainly, yeah. From my best recollection of what's been told to me, this used to be a farm. I think it was Larson. I'm having a mind blank here, but it was their farm. The farmhouse is still up on Fisk Street, and it was fields, and there was they had pigs, and they transferred it to the city, and there was a pond at one time, and perhaps a little stream. And from what Janet and some of the neighbors are telling me, there weren't flooding problems until I think the first baseball diamond got put in, and they put a little berm up on the kind of farther down. They did just put a berm in, and that's all I know of it. It used to be just a big field that was farmed with
I can expand on that a little bit. So my understanding is that there are two different times when that area was redeveloped. So initially, some initial ball fields were installed, and I don't know the exact dates, but I'm going to guess at 30 to 40 years ago. And then 20 to 30 years ago, some additional ball fields were installed. And according to Janet and our discussions with her, she indicated that the drainage really became problematic after the ball fields were installed. And even after the second round of ball fields were installed, it compounded some of the issues. That is what Janet has recently told me. I'd have to go back and check historic files to see dates and accuracy of that, but that's real briefly what Janet has shared. What I will tell you is that based on our survey that we did initially, all of the water in the ball field area that we just recently graded drained right towards those two property owners. So Bruce's property and also Janet's property. It was a solid slope that drained right to their properties. So, you know, when Bruce shared those photos of historical, you know, times when his property has flooded, you know, I can't answer honestly how much of that was attributed to the park and how much was attributed to other issues. But based on the survey, I would say that probably a chunk of it was due to the park developments. What we did when we installed these ball fields and expanded the parking lot is we've diverted a bulk of that water away from their properties. So not only did we install drain tile around the perimeter of both of the ball fields and behind Janet's house, which wasn't there before, we also diverted a lot of the water away from the direction of their house. So I would say about, I'm just guessing because I didn't calculate anything out, but I would say probably 2/3 of the site is now draining away from their property. Portion of it drains to the stormwater management that's installed in the new parking lot. So that is now picking up all of the stormwater for that upper hillside, which historically that just sheet drained towards their house. And then on the ball fields, how we graded those is those are crowned. So there's a high point and then the water drains off to the side and is picked up by drain tile. So like I said, I didn't calculate out the areas, I'm just going off of a guesstimate, but I would say previous to this ball field construction, all of that entire site drained towards those two houses for the bulk of it. Now I would say maybe 1/3 of it drains directly towards the houses, and it's just the outfield of the closest fields. And that's it. And the rest is all diverted to the first base lines, the third base lines, and will get captured by drain tile.
Okay. Well, for myself, I'm thinking that since nothing can be done anyway except for a berm, and it's perhaps not the best thing to do anyway if we may end up trapping water on the resident side, that perhaps we should wait, since nothing else can be done anyway, to be proactive, which I'm not exactly sure what that would be, to see what happens in the spring. And after a few rain events, to see if a berm might not be a good idea, or if we need to do further engineering than that. For me, I'm having no problem with receiving and placing this on file and bringing something up in the spring or summer, early summer, depending upon how the course of events. It seems like staff we have engineered this area to try and address stormwater issues. Let's see if what we've engineered, how successful it is. I certainly think, you know, if we have a storm event that is, you know, 100-year or 10, you know, even a 10, 20, whatever year event, however you want to describe it, I think we're going to have problems no matter what in such an event. I don't think we can engineer ourselves out of that realistically. But if we can take care of the normal drainage of winter runoff and typical storm events, I think we've done pretty good then. But we need to, the proof will be in the pudding, I think. So for me, I don't see, at first I was thinking perhaps go with a berm right now, so we could easily do that. And then see how that goes, since nothing else could be done till spring anyway. But I'm not even sure that we should do that until we see how things go, since a berm may also cause some problems. Let's see if there is problems, and then engineer to find the best solution, is my thinking. Alder Burnett.
I was hoping there would be some action. I don't know what that action would be. So I know the intended motion in place on file, at least now. But Director Ditchite, I mean, again, worst situation one of the worst situations as a homeowner is when you see water coming onto your property and you don't have the outlet. And I keep going back to, I know there's a solution that you have that you believe will work, but there's no guarantee it will. Now, if this motion to receive and place on file carries, if it's made, are you willing, like, can we put sandbags or some sort, if you notice like flooding may start occurring and, you can't plan every sort of situation and there's a lot of flooding all throughout the city, I get that. But are we prepared to put sandbags down, get a pump out there to divert water if the solution's not going to work? Is that an option?
We are not currently prepared for that. We don't have sandbags. Part of the issue too is, when does the storm event happen? A lot of times those storm events happen in the middle of the night. For us to get staff and mobilize and do work, I can't promise we'd be able to do that. We're just not set up to do that. And,
okay, that's fine. I mean, that's what I figured. There no hard feelings. I'm just trying to brainstorm ideas in case the intended outcome isn't what we think it will be.
Don't say storm.
Storm, yeah. Perfect storm. That's all, Chairman. Thank you.
Yep. Alder Gerlach?
It seems to me that receive and place on file is not what we want to do here. This is unresolved. Would it make sense to have a motion to the effect that there will be some kind of method of watching and reporting back to this committee and give a deadline, maybe 2 deadlines. We will have a report on this in this month and in this month, so that it doesn't just get lost and then we say, oh my goodness, look at that, it didn't work. What do you think?
Well, I think we are going to be keeping an eye on this. I think the neighbors are going to, certainly the residents are going to be keeping an eye on this and informing us. I don't think receiving and placing on file, this issue goes away unless the strict norm, what we've engineered works. But even then, some severe storm events may come, and depending upon those, we may decide perhaps a berm or some other engineered solution might be helpful. Certainly, if we've engineered to deal with the day-to-day drainage issues, which may be the case, we may have engineered this to the point where the typical runoff they've experienced in the past, they're not going to experience now. Then it's just storm events and what kind of storm events and how severe and how many and what can we do about it. And for me, those have to happen before we can figure out what to do. It'd be nice if we could be more proactive. I just don't know how we can responsibly do that. I mean, we're going to spend money on a possible solution. Spend money like that. I don't think that's responsible. I think we have to make sure we know what the problem is, have it engineered appropriately, and then take the money and
You froze
on us.
Active, but I just don't think we can do it responsibly myself.
Well, I will support whatever good plan you folks come up with for this.
Certainly we could table this until the spring or something if you feel like that would be better. I feel like either one, to me, they're the same motion as far as I'm concerned. Because if something does come up, I believe someone can put in a communication to deal with this right away, I would think. But if Alder Weary, what would you like to see done?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I kept popping in and out there. My son has religious ed class coming up, and I was going to bring him, but we're going a little long, so I had to get Grandma.
Okay.
Grandma's come in handy. They're number one.
Yep.
Yeah, this is where a crystal ball would certainly come in handy. Boy, I would like to maybe listen to what the residents have, because they spoke first, and then we really threw a lot out there. Maybe we could just hear their thoughts on it and then discuss it again if that's all right. I'm just going to make a motion to open the floor.
Certainly. Motion to open the floor by Alder Weary.
Second.
Seconded by Alder Burnett. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. And I would ask that anybody speaking to this really focus on an immediate solution that we could do right now that you think would be helpful. If there's anybody who wishes to speak on that.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, now Bruce and Janet, obviously it affects you 99% out of everybody over there. Are you willing to wait until spring, see if those improvements work, and if they don't, it will be corrected? Or you heard some of the other options that we could do in between. Before I make a definitive decision, or this committee, I kind of would like to know your thoughts.
Bruce, do you want to go? Can anyone hear me? Sorry.
Yep. Go ahead, please state your name and address.
It's Janet Angus. It's Janet Angus. I don't know if Bruce is still there or if he wants to speak to this.
He is.
I don't even know what to say. This has caused me so much mental anguish and stress over the fact that the ditch that is there it just overflows when it rains. And the fact that the city did not address this, and I know it's water over the dam right now, so to speak, and can't go backwards, but it should have been addressed. And I go back to the policies of the city, and I just really would like it if the city would give adjacent landowners notice so that this doesn't happen to somebody else going forward. I have hired an engineer. I'm going to meet with the engineer I've hired again. The person that I retained has opined that the drain tiles are not sufficient to take care of fast water moving across them with snow melt and in big storms. We haven't had snow melt. We haven't had a big storm since August 10th. We would have had no storm water management at all on the north side of the park, but for the fact that I got upset. So I think going forward, what I would like this committee to consider even more so than my initial issue here, I don't want this to happen to some other citizen who may not speak up, who may not come forward. You've got to get people involved in these processes so that the engineer knows the history behind the property going forward. Do I want all the city's water from the park going down my ditch? No. I have a chain link fence. I don't know what I'm going to do about it. It's a lot of money. And if you put the berm on my property, my fence goes away. And there's 300 feet of it, I think. So I'm sort of up in the air on what I'm going to do, but I got to tell you one thing, and I think many of you know my reputation. I'm not going to have 30% of my land covered in water and out there with a pump at 10:30 at night protecting one of my buildings. It doesn't make any sense. And in the spring, it's going to be cold, and the water's going to be high, and I'm going to be even more angry that this wasn't taken care of. And do I think it's going to be taken care of by what I can see out there with my eyes and looking at the elevations and talking to an engineer? I do not believe that the drain tile that's behind my property is going to take care of it. I think the only thing that's going to take care of it is a drain tile, a ditch on the park side, and a berm. Stop the water flow from all of the park coming towards the north side. And like I said, you know, the die is sort of cast now because of your the amount that you can spend, because you've already spent the 15% over the top of the project. But this is a $700,000 project. There's a lot of dirt back there. So I don't even know what to say. I think a berm and a swale and drain tile on the park side is a solution, but it's not going to happen because you know what? The city doesn't have the money to make it happen. And it's very unfortunate because this could have been something that was worked into the plan, I believe, you know, before. But anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
A question for you. Well, if we could do a berm, would you do you think on it'd be on your the part you're in Bruce's property? We could do that now. That's something that could be done now. You're not concerned about maybe the berm trapping water on your side of the property? Do you feel like a berm would be beneficial?
I don't think my property has enough water coming off of it to be trapped on that side. If you look at the lay of the land, which I've watched for years, it comes from the park. It comes from the, you know, the different areas. My property's sloped down and taken care of. So I'm not too worried about my property, and if I have a swale on the side of the berm on my side of the property and it's my water, I have no problem with taking care of that. But I think I sent most of you photographs of the amount of water that was there. It was unbelievable, the amount of water that was there on August 10th, and there was no stormwater plan. No stormwater plan. And that was the problem. That's why I got so upset, because there was no plan. And if you put the berm in, if the city puts the berm in, then what are they going to do with my fence? I mean, it's an old fence, but it's still a fence. So that's the issue, because the berm would be overway on my property, and I'll probably just end up taking care of it myself, because it's not going to get done timely anyway. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. I'm sorry if I.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I was not concise and to the point, but then again, you know, just don't have this happen to anybody else. Not a fun position to be in. Very stressful. It wasn't in my budget for this year. It wasn't in my plan for my time and how I'm spending my time, you know, taking care of these water issues. So, you know, there are a lot of people who don't come forward, who are intimidated, who don't talk. And, you know, for those people, you really have to get out into the community and ask more questions on projects like this going forward. My humble opinion. So I'm about changing systems, making systems better for people and for citizens. And, you know, I just feel like I was the neglected person out of this whole equation. So anyway, that being said, I think I've talked enough. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any comments, Bruce, on a berm? Do you think that'd be beneficial this year yet, or
may I ask a question?
Certainly a question for Janet Angus.
Please.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
So sometimes a yard has to be fenced. There's a reason that it has to be fenced. If the solution would be to take your fence down and put a berm on your property, would that in and of itself cause another problem? Does your yard need to be fenced?
My yard does need to be fenced, yes. Thank you for asking that question. There are so many people that park on Shirley Street and in other areas. They would just walk right across my property and go to those baseball diamonds and go directly across my property. You know, they wouldn't go over the sidewalk. It wouldn't be good. You know, when you find dirty diapers and garbage in your property and things like that, on the edges of it, I can only imagine what it would be like if I didn't have a fence. So yes, I do need a fence on the back side of that property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So my comment is, we're talking about the lowest part of Colburn Park. And I heard they're going to put a retention pond there, and I'm like, well, okay, maybe they'll take care of this river that runs through Janet's property, and the retention pond is just between two parking lots. And I thought when they were talking about taking care of water, it would be, you know, go to the low, as the parking lot is above us, the baseball fields are above us, the Colburn Hill, the woods, it's all above us. So it's all water that comes down the hill to the lowest part, and it's been a known problem. So if somebody had talked to us, when I saw multiple piles of dirt that is larger than my house being continuously dropped and then spread, I didn't understand why, you know, this is a similar use of the park if you're changing the grade substantially by adding 2 baseball fields times 3 feet to the lowest part of the park. So that's my issue. But I mean, if you know, you can use my property to put a, you know, I just don't understand why, you know, it will say, hey, you've got a river in the back of this park. What are we going to do about it? So, but yeah, I'm willing to talk about putting in a berm. It's just unfortunate they didn't measure the property lines and made the drainage tile so close. So it's just very unfortunate that we found out so late in the process. Thank you for your.
Yep. Thank you. Any questions for Bruce? Anything else, Alderweary, you need?
No, I'll make a motion to close the floor.
Motion to close the floor by Alderweary.
Second.
Second by Alder-Gerlach. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Floor is now closed. Alderweary?
Well, we've got a little bit of a conundrum here, right? We've got no time, no money, and no crystal ball. So
yeah,
other than that, we're all good. And I do appreciate, Bruce, that you offered to use your property, but it wouldn't help just, I think, just to put, you know, a berm there, right? Because then we would just go around it the other way. So we would either need all or nothing. And we really couldn't just put it on the city property behind Janet's house, because then that just totally covers up the drain tile we put in. So it would be buried under a berm. So the only way that would work is if we put in a new drain, you know, on the side of it. So any idea, Dan, on what a drain tile would cost just for that length of the fence, a new one to be put in?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know that.
I don't know if that would still fall within our 15%. You said we didn't use it all up yet.
I don't have an answer for you on that. I mean, it'd be the installation of another drain in addition to the installation of a berm.
Yep.
All I can tell you is we spent 40 to 50 to install that original drain tile. I would just be guessing. And then the question is, can it even fit? Possibly, but those ball fields, you know, there's not a ton of room in between that last ball field and Bruce's property.
I'll be interested to hear what the rest of the committee thinks on this one.
I think I'm sitting where I sat before. I'd like to see what happens in the spring. Since we wouldn't be able to get the new drain tile in anyway till spring. Let's see what we've engineered, how it helps, how it doesn't help, and then we got problems, do the engineering to figure out what's the best solution, and then work toward that. I just feel very. I mean, I feel to do anything else other than maybe do would be fairly inexpensive, and we could do now. We can't do it, and I'm not sure that the berm right now is the best solution. Let's see what happens in the spring, and if there's major problems, what's the engineered best solution? Maybe a berm's part of it, maybe not, maybe something else. I don't know, whatever the engineers come up with. That's my thinking. Alder-Gerlach?
Is it possible to, I believe we were told $5,000 would buy us a good engineering analysis. Is that correct, Director Ditchett?
What it'll tell you is how it's different from how it originally was. I guess the existing conditions, they'd be able to do a model of the existing conditions prior to construction to see how much water drained off of the site. And then they would do another second model to determine what the new improvements, how much it changed that drainage pattern. But what it won't be able to tell you is whether or not that's adequate to the expectations to the city council and the adjacent homeowners, because really that's just time will tell.
Okay, my second question, and this is a very naive question. Is it possible to put into next year's budget funding to do a good engineering study, no matter what we find out over the winter? if we don't have another great big storm to test out these drain tiles, can we budget for that and just commit to doing it?
Well, I think that, yes, you can. You can do that. It would probably have to be part of our bond request, or we could add it to the budget as a one-time budget expense. The one thing that I would just caution here is what is the intent of the engineering study. If the intent is that we know that there's something wrong, then we would hire an engineer to design something different. I guess my only issue and concern is we don't yet know whether or not this is an adequate solution. So I'd be hesitant to just hire an engineering firm to just tell us what's changed, because we know it's changed and we know it's going to function better than it did because there was nothing in place prior to this. I would only recommend that you move forward with an engineering study if there's an expectation that we're going to re-engineer it and do something different. Otherwise, in my mind, I don't know if it's worth the expense, because I don't know what you do with that information once you have it.
Okay, that's great. That helps me. Thank you. So, Alder Scannell, I'm with you that I think we need to wait until spring and find out, but I just feel that we must somehow show that we are committed to coming back to this and taking a good look at it and making sure that it works.
Oh, would you like to make a motion to table this until sometime in the spring, early summer?
If you promise me it'll come back.
Well, if you table it, it comes back, yes.
Okay, what's a good time to table it to?
First meeting in, what would you suggest, Dan? First meeting in June, second meeting in May?
Either of those options would work. By then, spring will be finished, and we'll have a good understanding at that point how the first spring went in relation to the drainage. Yeah. I don't think I'd do it any earlier than that, because you know, in April you have a lot of freeze-thaw cycles. You have some rain events thrown in there on top of that. I don't know if it'd be worth discussing it in April, but I'll leave that up to you.
So how about I would move to table this until June of 2022, period.
Yeah, our first meeting in June.
Sure.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it, but if I could comment.
Right, certainly, yep. Seconded by Brunette.
Yeah, conflicted. I'm frustrated as well, because I was really hoping for an action item. I just don't know what the action item is, and that's why I'm frustrated. And so I don't like receive and place on file. I appreciate Alder Gerlach's motion in that it doesn't like kill it so that it goes away, or kind of doesn't make us acknowledge the issue. June seems a bit far out. You know, it would have been nice to maybe, you know, April, May. I agree with what Director Ditchite said, but I guess the fear for me would be that if there is significant flooding come spring, I'd like to at that time to see if the city can do some short-term fix, whether it be getting a pump or sandbag or something. So I'll go ahead with the motion, because I don't know what the alternative is, quite frankly, and that's hard for me to admit, because usually I like to solve problems. I just don't know what the solution is given the discussion today. So thank you.
Just if I may, quick, Alder, then yourself. Yeah, I think if we do get some issues before the first meeting in June, I think that, and I think Alder Weary would be well aware of that. His constituents will be well aware of that. They'll be on him, and he could certainly put in a communication, and we don't have that tabled item to come back if there's an emergency situation. So go ahead, Alder Weary.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the committee really taking the time to try and find a solution. It's not an easy one. We have a lot of different restraints, you know, the financial, the contract, and the time of year, and not knowing what's going to happen. I had really hoped that the engineering study that we, you know, could have done would have given us more information. I was really kind of pinning my hopes on that, but it sounds like they're just going to put in a little computer program and tell us, yeah, it'll be better. No, it's going to be worse. Well, I don't know, for $5 grand, I don't know if that's worth it. You know, that doesn't tell us a whole lot. You know, is it gonna be a lot better, a lot worse, about the same? I really hoping for more from that. So that leaves us with guessing right now and trying to do something, or waiting and address it right away, depending on what happens. I'm reluctantly fine with that, although I will, Dan, ask if you can, between now and council, if at all possible, could you find out how much it would cost to put in the new drain tile behind Bruce and Janet's house, replacing it so that there would be room for the berm, and then how much the berm would be there?
I can look into that, and I will try to get you that answer by council.
And then if you could just let me know, or us know, if that would fall within that 15%.
Sure.
Obviously, if it falls within, we have an option, right? It's an option on the table. If it's above, well, then it's out of our hands.
And we'll also look at, as part of that, we'll also look at our budget to see what we could afford to do and not do.
Because that's just the one missing, something that we can try. But
yeah, and I don't think that needs to be part of the motion. We'll just look into that prior to council.
I appreciate it.
Alder Gerlach.
What is the 15%? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Per state statute, when you bid out a construction project, you can only have 15% over the base bid price in change orders.
Okay.
Anything above that, and you should be rebidding the project as a separate project.
Well, we've got a motion and a second.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman,
sure.
I know it's been addressed, a couple times. It will be coming back about how residents near a park project will be notified. We had discussed that a couple years ago. We thought we had a good solution. Turns out it had some loopholes that weren't so good, and so that will be coming back, right, Dan, in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I was hoping to have it on this committee agenda, but truthfully, I didn't have time to prepare my suggested changes. So I will be bringing the park public notification policy back to Parks Committee, either more than likely at the next Parks Committee meeting.
Thank you. So yeah, I think this is the way to go right now, unless I hear differently from Dan with his numbers. If there's something we can do, or if something else turns up before council, we'll hope we can swing for the fences and find something yet. But
you hit a home run.
I know. Had to get a basic thing.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. I want to thank the public for your comments. It was very helpful. Hopefully, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully what we did will be at least beneficial to some degree somehow. So, are we ready for item 3, Dan?
Yes.
Consideration with possible action on accepting the donation of outdoor furniture currently located on City Deck by Downtown Green Bay, Inc. Yeah?
So on April 28th, the Parks Committee approved letting Downtown Green Bay, Inc. purchase and install some outdoor furniture on City Deck. And in the agenda packet, you'll see photos of the furniture that has been installed. So they purchased it for a price of $12,300. Now they're interested in officially donating the furniture to the Parks Department to permanently keep at City Deck. So when we brought this original proposal forward, they weren't sure yet if they wanted to donate it, but now they do. So the furniture has worked well over the last few months. It has gotten some use out there, and we would be supportive of accepting this donation. So, and I do want to thank Downtown Green Bay, Inc. for all their hard work to see this project through, and their ongoing commitment to keep City Deck and downtown vibrant and active. So,
move to approve.
Second.
By Alder Brunette to approve. Do we know? Does any of the chairs, are they ejector seats to flip people into the Fox? Anything like that? No. Oh wow.
Just yours.
Yeah. Okay, and I'd also like to thank as chair Downtown Inc. They work hard and they do a great job with City Deck. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. On to 4.
We're ready.
Consideration with possible action. Oh shoot, my screen changed on me. On the request by Alder Stoyer on behalf of the, no. Green, hang on, there we go.
We want a picture, not a...
Yeah. Consideration with possible action on the staff recommended City of Green Bay Emerald Ash Borer 2021 to 2023 tree removal plan. Staff.
So first of all, I want to apologize for not getting this plan to you a little bit earlier. I know I sent it out last minute and did it as part of an amended agenda, but I hope you all had time to review that. If not, it is attached to the agenda packet that is online. So we did discuss this issue at the July 28th Parks Committee. So the concern that was brought forward was that the ash trees are starting to die off due to emerald ash borer at a rate faster than our forestry crews were removing them. So I'm sure that all of you have received numerous concerns and complaints in regards to that. So at that meeting, we verbally told the committee what our strategy was going to be moving forward, but we didn't have a plan actually written down. So the Parks Committee requested that we develop a formal written plan and bring it back to the Parks Committee for discussion. So in the agenda packet, you'll see two documents. The first document is a one-page summary of the emerald ash borer timeline, along with what our staff recommendations are over the next few years. And this is a great one-page document that can easily be handed out to the public. And our intent is actually to put that one-page document on our city website once, if this is approved by the city council. So there's also a more detailed 4-page written report that's attached that has a lot of support documentation and really a lot of detailed analysis of how we arrived to that one-page summary. But in essence, what you'll see is this is basically the same recommendation that we presented last July, but there's just a lot more information attached to it. So I saw Alderman Burnett was raising his hand. I don't know if he has a question initially, otherwise I'll just continue.
Alder Burnett?
You can continue, Director. That's fine.
Okay.
I had comments, but I just wanted to say you don't need to apologize. I reviewed the report, and I think you and Mr. Pilat have outdone yourself. I think it's a fantastic summary. It's everything I was expecting and more.
Thank you.
No need. I'd rather you spend a little more time preparing it and being thorough the way that you are than the alternative. So good work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I'll just kind of give you a brief summary of what's contained in that report. So over the past year, we've inventoried all of our street trees, and we determined that there's a total of 2,000 street ash trees that would need to be scheduled to be removed because they're either dead or dying. So our goal in this plan would be to remove these trees in the next 3 years. So the initial 900 trees would be removed in 2021. The remaining 1,100 trees would be removed in 2022 to 2023. And then to put this in perspective, forestry crews typically remove 750 trees annually when you include all of the street tree removals plus all of the other removals that we do. And so between 2021 and 2023, our forestry crews will have to remove about 1,400 trees per year versus the 750. So we're roughly doubling the amount of trees that we're removing on any given year. And as you can imagine, bumping up the tree removal rate will have an impact on our other operations. So, but we feel that the removal rate that we're proposing is necessary so that these dead trees in the street right-of-way don't become hazardous to the public. Over time, if they continue to stand for a long duration of time, you might have some rotting that occurs which might make them unsafe. And so currently the forestry crews only have 12 crew members. So in order to create this task, what we'll do is create 2 crews of 4 or 5 foresters. One crew would be working on tree removals on the east side. The other crew would be working on tree removals on the west side. And so, and then there'll be a few crews, a few staff members left over to do the miscellaneous stuff that is going to pop up over time. And so in order to accomplish this task of really bumping up our removal rates, obviously we'll have to eliminate other services that the forestry department offers during that timeline. So over that 3-year period, we're going to eliminate all stump grinding altogether. In addition, we'll have to put the majority of our pruning efforts on hold. We'll still prune in emergency situations because there's always needs to prune on occasion, but the majority of the preventative pruning would be put on hold. And so this would then have an impact on our citywide pruning cycle. So currently we prune all of our street trees on about an 8 to 9 year cycle. Because we won't be doing that preventative pruning over the next 2 or 3 years, that'll push the next pruning cycle to 11 to 12 years. Once we get through that cycle, then it'll be back on our rotation of 8 to 9 years. It's just that initial one would be pushed back. We do feel that continuing to plant some street trees, though, is important because so many larger ash trees have died out. We do need to start restoring that urban canopy. So what we're proposing in this plan is to do 500 ash tree replacements per year. And obviously we'll replace them with alternate species. So that's less than our normal year, but it's still a decent amount of planting that's going to occur in the city. So on a positive note, though, in the long run, this issue should help create a stronger urban forest. So prior to EAB, there simply was too many ash trees in our tree system. So all research indicates that in order to create a healthy, diverse urban forest, you need a lot of species diversity so that if this happens again, it's not as traumatic to our tree inventory. So that is one positive thing. The other thing I also want to mention is that, you know, by postponing the stump removals and tree pruning, we'll be causing issues down the road. But we do feel that the benefits of this plan do greatly outweigh the concerns. So over the next few years, though, we will be proactive in trying to secure alternate funding sources for additional labor to get back on track with some of these delayed tasks. So we're currently in the process of planning for the implementation of a Green Bay Conservation Corps program. And if this initiative does move forward, then there's a potential for additional city staff that might be available to help with some of these other services that we're postponing for the next 2 to 3 years. In addition, we'll also keep looking for alternative funding sources so that maybe we can contract some of that work out. But right now we're limited to our budget and the staff we have, but we'll try to get creative as we move forward. So, and then just one other thing that I want to mention before we open it up for questions. This plan does only address the dead and dying street ash trees. So it really doesn't take into account the ash trees within the parks and greenways. So those trees will have to be prioritized on a case-by-case basis, but the street trees will take the primary focus in this 3-year plan. So that's a real brief summary of everything that's in the plan. Open to have questions, open to answer questions, and I do want you to know that our city forester is on the line if you have specific questions for him.
Alder Brunette.
Yes, thank you. I noticed Mr. Pila was on the call for the last 2 hours, a little disappointed. He could have cut down a couple trees while he was waiting while we were talking about Colbert. Now, all joking aside, thank you for that report, Dan. A little concerned about the tree grinding and the lack of pruning, but as you stated, the Conservation Corps position that we approved hopefully can divert some resources, not paid resources, but other types of resources towards some of those initiatives, because as we cut down trees, it would be nice to replenish them. Trees are important for a lot of reasons. But on a more specific note, I guess what I want to make sure that we talk about and that you assure the committee in regards to city work, aside from public safety like police, fire, paramedic, public works, I can't imagine a much more dangerous job within the city of Green Bay than cutting down trees. And I know we're increasing quite a bit the annual tree cutting with pretty much the same staff. So can you assure us that, you know, safety is obviously considered highly important because, when you increase that number of trees, the crews are going to get tired and more sort of work day in, day out. It's got to take a toll on a person. So has that been considered? You'll assure us that it will be done in a safe manner while still keeping the speed?
Yeah, I will assure you that our city foresters are well trained on safety aspects. This is a dangerous profession, as you're aware, but we do take it very serious, and we do have regular safety training sessions with all of our staff and forestry staff in particular. I don't know if our city forester has some specific examples that he can share with you, but like I said, we do take it extremely seriously. So. Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
Just, thank you for understanding how dangerous this job can be. We do take safety very seriously. We have one of the finest safety records, in any division across the city. And we do rotate our staff on a 2-week basis so that we're not burning out particular people. Of our 12-person staff, we have 7 forestry worker 2s that are doing the felling and operating bucket trucks. So we can rotate everybody through on a good schedule to keep them fresh and keep everybody safe.
Thank you. No other questions for me, Chairman.
Anyone else? Alder Gerlach?
I don't have a question. I just would like to thank you so much for putting this in aldermanic districts so that we can all see the statistics for our district and talk to our constituents intelligently about it. Thank you.
Until we get wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to change when the districts change in a month.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. I haven't been through that yet.
All right.
Alder Steuer?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I want to give kudos as well to Director Ditchite and Mr. Pilot on this report, and it does help with the aldermanic districts. This is pretty much just for street trees, I presume, Director.
This plan specifically addresses street trees, but as far as stump grinding goes, that would be, we are eliminating all stump grinding, so that includes within the parks. And same with pruning. So we wouldn't be doing proactive pruning in the parks either at this point.
Okay. But do you foresee, of course, you foresee a time where that will come back, but you just are not sure when. Yeah,
so after the 2,000 trees are removed, we will kind of get back into our routine. But I would anticipate getting a lot of complaints, especially as it relates to the stump grinding, because although people don't like to look at dead trees, they also don't like to look at stumps in their front yard either. And that will be a recurring issue, and we just can't do it all with the staff we have, so we're prioritizing where the most important needs are right now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Alder Weary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Dan. I know you're limited with what you have available, but with budget time coming, have these discussions occurred with the mayor yet, and maybe hiring out some extra help to do stump grinding or some of the taking down of trees?
Yeah, this plan's been reviewed with the mayor, but as it relates to our funding request for the 2022 budget, we are budgeting at similar staffing levels.
Okay. Could you have some numbers? And I can ask you offline too, but I think everybody here would like to know what would it cost to throw in some hiring people to do stump grinding? I can tell you, 3 years, people can barely wait 6 months, right?
Yeah, I'll have to have some discussions with our city forester and the mayor on that, and also I'll have to bring Steve Grenier into that discussion because, as you know, like I previously mentioned, forestry is 88% under the stormwater budget. Yep. So obviously that would have an impact on the stormwater rates.
Yep. If this stands right now and budget time comes up, I'll gladly make some motions to put some additional money or find some money, because 3 years is not going to cut it. I don't care how we explain it to people. It will not cut it. Believe me, it just won't cut it. Especially no new trees really being planted where their stumps were. Man, it's going to look disastrous. I know your hands are tied. There's got to be a way to do better than this. And so if we can think about that as budget comes, get some numbers together of what we would need to get us back to normal or halfway back to normal. I would appreciate it. I'll certainly try, and I think most of us. So you got my support.
And for me, I really don't. I mean, stuff grinding is really, for me, that could be. I have no problem with that waiting. I mean, looks are something I can put up with 3 years, and complaints on looks I can put up with 3 years. But my most concern is with the trimming. I mean, that's where with power lines, with visuals for our traffic signs and signals. To me, that's where I'd really like to see a focus of where we can not get too far behind on that and keep up on that. You mentioned a couple. I was very happy to hear you mentioned a couple of possibilities of how we might be able to get some more help to address that, and I would certainly support being able to maintain the trimming as much as possible. I feel that's a hazard. That's a safety issue. Stumps are, let's have a contest and people can decorate stumps. Whatever, we have some fun with it, whatever. But the trimming is, I think, is a hazard that I'm really concerned about. So, Alder Burnett.
Yeah, Mr. Pilot, when you cut down a tree, how far from the surface of the ground are you able to get?
With the stump grinding?
No, like prior to stump grinding. Like how big of a...
Yeah, we get them 6 inches. It all depends kind of on the site, but we do cut them as low as possible because that does save on the stump grinding time.
Yeah,
and we don't have much debris to clean up.
No, 6 inches is still a trip hazard. So I appreciate Alder Scannell and saying, it's unsafe. Regardless of the way you look at it, it's unsafe to have dying trees in our city. It's unsafe to not prune, street signs and power lines and whatnot. It's also unsafe to have 6 inches of a stump protruding from the ground. At night, kids playing, running, they don't always see those sorts of safety too. So I agree with Alder. I made this point a couple months ago when this first came up. City budget, hopefully resources are allocated that we can try to address it all. I do agree with you, Alder Scannell. Tree stumps on an aesthetic level, I could care less about personally. That doesn't mean that my constituents feel the same way. I'm concerned about safety. Kids playing, running, walking dogs, especially late at night. It's a trip hazard, and I want to be mindful of that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Ditchite, how difficult would it be to get some budgetary numbers for this to maintain our services?
I mean, I can have that prepared for the budget meeting. I guess I'd need a little bit more information as far as what you're looking for.
Well, if you were to maintain our full forestry services next year, knowing the work we have to do, what would it take? What would it get you, what would it take to get to that point?
I'll work with the city forester to see if we can generate that for you.
I'll make a motion to refer this back to staff for budgetary numbers to maintain full forestry services. Just so we have some numbers to work with. I would have no idea what to do with the budget. I don't have any numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but if there's not a second, I'd like to.
I will second it.
Yeah.
Okay, second, motion by Alder Wery, second by Alder Gerlach. Go ahead, Alder Burnett.
I like the motion, but when you say to maintain current level of forestry, what we're looking to do is maintain, but also add the ability to cut down some of these trees.
Well, yeah.
I get the point, though. I think the motion gets us there. I just want to make sure that's known.
You are correct.
Maintain current as is, but also add additional resources to clear some of these ash trees.
To maintain the current tree stump grinding and tree trimming.
Right. And planting, yeah.
Yeah.
It just gives us and the public an idea. Here's what we need. Are we willing to sacrifice for it or not? Right? It gives us a clear picture.
Can you clarify the motion for all of us? I'd like to just hear.
It was just to refer the report back to staff to include budgetary numbers in order to maintain our full forestry service in addition to the extra work that is needed on the ash trees.
Okay. As long as that's understood, I think, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. It's really just information for all of us to work with, so we know how big of an issue this is.
Yeah. Alder Gerlach?
Just a question. I seconded the motion, but I just want to make sure I'm in favor of it. If we ask this information to come back to us in 2 weeks, is that going to hold anything up for the forestry staff for the next 2 weeks?
I don't know if I'll have that information ready for you in the next 2 weeks. It's one of those where I can have it to you as part of the budget. I'll have to get back to you on when I can have this prepared by. But as far as the direction the forestry department or division would go, we likely will, I'll let Brian speak to that, but you know, that's a short duration of, you know, a few weeks or a month here. So we probably will be proactive starting to remove some of these trees at this point. And if we change directions based on where the budget goes, we can kind of go back to where we were. But Brian, can you speak a little bit more as to where our staff is currently at as far as their function or what they're working on currently?
Sure. So staff just finished up our removal list that we started last fall, winter, which was a big amount of that was ash trees. And we have one stump grinding crew. They are about 150 stumps, street tree stumps away from getting through that list as well. So we're kind of using the next weeks here going into October as a transition phase that we're trying to get some pruning done, because we are getting a lot of requests for pruning, clearance, things like that, school buses. And then, so yeah, the next 2 weeks, if we're not gonna be doing a lot of removals, we're gonna try to do some essential pruning, get ready for tree planting in the fall. I anticipate the bulk of the ash removal starting sometime in November, depending on planting season and how our fall weather is.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Alder Brunette?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just don't want, in my opinion, I don't want Director Ditchite or Mr. Pilat to think we don't appreciate the report that was done. Very thorough. They're only working with the resources that the council will allow them. And, you know, this is an extraordinary situation with the emerald ash borer that we need to rectify, lest we have even more significant damage to our tree stock throughout the city. So thank you both gentlemen for doing this, and hopefully we can work out a solution and provide the adequate funding to do everything we need to do in forestry. Thank you. Just needed to say that.
And I think we don't really need this information back at committee. This is just so we've got it for budget, correct, Alder Weary? That's
yeah, and I should clarify that, yeah, really the reason for that would be for budget time. That is when it would be needed, and it is an excellent report. It clearly shows, you know, where it's needed and spells out the situation. It's excellent, but I would like some data and ammo and information on how to keep our services where they are, if at all possible. So thanks.
okay. So motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Are we ready for the next item?
Yes.
Okay. Possible consideration with possible action on donating 1229 Clare Street. St. Clair Street. I should know that too. Okay. Parcel 14-68 to the Green Bay Redevelopment Authority. Staff?
So originally this parcel consisted of a single-family residential unit. The parcel was purchased in 2005 by the Parks Department for future trail expansion efforts. So at the time when we acquired this property, the desire was to build the East River Trail expansion along the south side of the river between Baird and Roosevelt, instead of on the north side, which is where it's being proposed now. So in this proposal, portions of the trail would have been built in the backyards where there's deep residential lots, and on other parcels where the lots are shallow and we couldn't fit a house in a trail, the entire parcel would be purchased and the house would be removed to make room for the trail. So as you're all aware, within the last 10 years, we had a lot of public input sessions, and the decision was made to route the trail to the north side of the river instead of the south side. And this was the first and the only lot that was purchased for future trail purposes. So after we acquired it, the city removed the house, and it's currently being maintained as a grass area. And in fact, we do have a lease with the adjacent property owner, which allows him to park vehicles on the property in exchange for mowing the turf. So that was approved a number of years ago. So since this parcel isn't really needed for trail or park purposes anymore, there's a desire by staff to redevelop this parcel for residential again. You know, it doesn't make sense for parks to continue to maintain that property when there is no need to build a city park there. It's too small of a site, and the trail isn't going to be located there anymore. So we're recommending that the city donate the parcel to the redevelopment authority and for them to initiate the redevelopment process. And I would recommend that we donate this instead of selling it to the redevelopment authority. So there are a lot of situations where the RDA purchases property and donates it to the city for park development. So that's actually a pretty common occurrence throughout the years. So we would just kind of be extending the offer in the other direction.
Any comments from anyone?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Alder Weary.
Second.
Second by Alder Gerlach. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Are we ready for 6?
Yes, we are.
Consideration with possible action on the approval of the purchase of a demo Toro 16-foot Groundmaster 5,900 riding mower for the sum of $94,899.27 from Reindeers. That just sounds really weird. Staff?
I think Alder Burnett is raising his hand. I don't know if he has a question.
I just want to know if they can cut tree stumps.
Yeah.
We can try. You never know. Might be a lot of replacement blades, though. So in 2021, in 2021, the city bonded $113,000 to replace a 16-foot mower with a cab. The original unit that we're replacing was purchased in 2010, and it's in need of replacement. It gets a lot of use. We're using it constantly, and there's a lot of hours on it. So we recently came across a Toro 16-foot mower for sale that was being used as a demo model by Reindeers. So the purchasing department did get a formal quote from them for the demo unit versus a comparable new unit. So I've included that quote in the agenda packet. So for the new unit, the comparable quote was $123,307. And for the demo unit, the quote came in at $94,899. The city does frequently purchase items from Reindeers. They are a big company, so we've purchased a lot from them and haven't had any issues in the past. We do have a lot of experience with various brands of mowers. In this situation, our preference is to only purchase a Toro mower to replace the Toro mower that we're currently using. We're going to be using this mower to mow the steep hillsides at Triangle Hill. And from our previous experience, we found that Toro mowers are the safest mowers on slopes as steep as that. So we've tried other mowers in the past on these hillsides, and they just haven't worked out very well. So we've already tested this demo mower on site, and it will do an adequate job of mowing. Our crews are pretty happy with how it mows on that hillside. And our mechanics have also inspected the mower and have no concerns with purchasing this demo unit. There's currently approximately 300 hours on the unit, so it's still not a lot of use on it to date. So our recommendation is to purchase the demo mower for the sum of $94,899.27 from Reinders.
Move to approve.
Motion to Elder Burnett.
Second.
Seconded by Elder Gerlach. I hear this mower is a cut above the rest. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously.
We
Are we
are
ready
set
to
for the next item.
Informational Director's Report. Updates and recent activities of the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department.
So I just have a couple of brief things to mention to you. One is that Bay Beach is now closed for the season, and we had a pretty good year. So our revenues were very similar to 2019. So I know that there was a lot of concerns with how, you know, COVID this year would be in comparison to last year. And what we're finding is people just wanted to go out and enjoy the park and spend some time outside at the amusement park. So we're pretty happy with those revenues, and I'm sure we'll share more once the season is finalized and we have exact numbers to share with you. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, which we already briefly touched on, is the notification policy. So as I previously, the notification policy about public notification, sorry. I didn't quite have that ready to bring to this committee, so I'll be bringing it to a future committee agenda. So I just wanted you to be aware of the timeline and let you know I didn't forget about proposing changes to that policy. I just haven't had a chance to fine tune it yet.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Motion to receive and place on file by Alder Burnett.
Second.
Second by Alder Gerlach. Alder Weary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This just flashed into my mind for some reason. I'd be meaning to ask you about this, Dan. Somebody had kind of clued me in on Facebook that there was a train and track for sale in Luxembourg, Wisconsin. The same one we have. I don't know if you've seen that. Do we need extra train parts or track? But
yeah, I'll look into it. I wasn't aware of that one. It's possible that our superintendent out there, or that Jason is aware of it. So I'll ask him if he knows about it and see if we have a need for that track.
Yeah, if you can. They tagged me in on it, and I meant to get it to you, but I just remembered it. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Glad you didn't lose track of that.
Oh no. I make a motion that we've had enough of Randy's puns.
Yes.
I second. I'm not on the committee. I second.
There was a motion to receive and place on file and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we have received and placed that on file. Our next meeting is October 13th of this year. Take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Burnett. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We adjourn. Thanks, staff. Excellent job, everyone. Thank you. Good work.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
See you later.
Bye.
Chris, the Brewers are winning 1-0.
Oh, yay.
Yay. How bad did they lose yesterday? I never did.
6-2.
62.
Just beat them once. Just beat them once. All right.
With a stick.
All right. Bye, guys. Yeah.
Bye.